Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. My name at this juncture is unimportant. I will likely reveal it at a later point in time, but for the meantime, John Smith will be a suitable alias. Before I reveal to you some of the files that I have archived, I will need to explain to you a bit more about myself and why I am doing this. Hopefully, this will grant you a bit better insight into myself. I am, for a lack of a better word, a sociopath. But unlike the ones with poor impulse control and self-destructive behavior, I had ingrained into me at a young age proper life skills by my father after he caught me standing over the fourth cat that I had killed. It was not out of malice, I doubt it was even curiosity, and I am not trying to make an awful pun. I just did it. He demanded to know the reason for my actions, and I explained that the cats had started to follow me, and I found it annoying. When I asked if I had done anything wrong, there was a shock in his eyes, as I have later come to realize. He explained to me that the cats that I had killed were beloved pets of other families who will want to know where they went. I didn't understand why this was so important, but his urgency in his voice made the impression that while I may not have cared, other people would. "Are they going to throw me in jail?" I asked, and he looked at me for a moment and said, "No, John, I won't, but I need to understand why you act this way, and I will teach you how to blend in with the rest of the world. Your actions could have dire consequences for your life if you do not maintain control, so I will teach you. It will be difficult, but the lessons are valuable." In short, he trained me like I was an army private. Strict timetable, strict punishment, constant drills into theoretical situations, but he was never aggressive. There were times when I could see the predatory mindset that he may not have been aware of and would try to push through, but he kept it in check. Being on military base most of my life, the discipline was familiar. Eventually, I would join the army and I did fairly well. And while I did not understand why others did, I was aware that they would have motivations. The rest of my life was, I believe, mundane. Nothing of significance really appears to mind, but then again, it is not like I have a good point of comparison. I was 8 years into my service, and I was acknowledged as a capable soldier who was dependable. And one night, during a night exercise in a country that I cannot speak of due to certain laws, my unit was performing reconnaissance. Potential intruder was sighted, and we were to verify the identity. 6 soldiers walked into the forest that night, and only I walked out. And it is the only truly definitive point in my recent years. Deep into the forest, we were in standard search formation. Jacob heard a crack of wood breaking and then signaled us to halt. As our eyes swept around to locate the source, a rushing being charged into outline and took kill. The scream was shortened by a loud crack, and his neck was broken. Tommy went to investigate, but was dragged into the woods before anyone could countermand his actions. "Open fire," I asked softly. "Negative. Our people might still be in there." Knives were drawn, and by that time, another soldier was dragged screaming into the woods. 3 soldiers left and the discipline was diminishing. "Fuck it," grumbled Erickson behind me. And as soon as the movement was heard, Erickson fired. We watched as the bullets hit the creature, but no wounds were visible. This tall, lanky creature slammed its fist onto Erickson's head with a crunch noise that I cannot describe, and I was grabbed and thrown to the side. My head smacked into the tree and I was dazed. I could barely hear gunfire and the growls that sounded more than bestial, if that makes sense. And shaking my head, I pushed myself upright. The gun was useless, and this being was far too quick and strong to be human. But it did not match any known animal that I am aware of at that point in time. Rustling could be heard around me for 3 very tense minutes. They seemed to lead deeper into the woods, and I was prepping to head in to verify the status of my men when I felt it stand behind me.
"Empty,"
it said. This pale creature looking into me with presumable sunken eyes revealing what looked like black eyes. The image of a piece of meat at the butcher's dangling by one of those large hooks immediately popped into my mind.
"Empty,"
it repeated, then it turned around and slipped away. I couldn't move or act. Distant noises indicated that it was walking away, but the pace seemed more deliberate, like it was dragging my men. I left the forest, heading back to the base, and after intense debriefing and threats of court-martial, I was allowed to remain an active soldier while undergoing therapy. Mental breakdown was the official diagnosis, while that unit was deemed MIA. They sent out 4 units to locate my old unit. 3 people returned, husks of who they once were. And when I got the chance to lock eyes, we nodded once. We knew. After my service, I left and I decided to further investigate the cryptid phenomenon. During this time, I would find the entity that killed my unit and several other soldiers. The Wendigo. My theory about the Wendigo's hunger isn't that it seeks human meat to survive, but humanity. The human soul is what it seeks. Knowing it lost it when it consumed human flesh, it considers that it might regain it the same way, not realizing that it is the act itself that will doom it to remain a Wendigo. No longer an active soldier, I researched the cryptids, but I went further than most enthusiasts. I spoke with another soldier who asked to remain nameless about the deep web and the best way to browse it. He explained to me the nature of some sites in the dark web, but I explained that I wasn't seeking that, but the back channels of the deep web. He gave me a copy of his custom browser, which he dubbed The Fly, because it was small and looked seemingly inconsequential. It could flit past the red rooms and then like to go deep. He explained the setup and then I thanked him. After I set up, I went into the dark side of the internet. I was testing the program out and it worked perfectly. A few red rooms were displaying their, entertainment, and I was able to slip past most of the admins. One was particularly aggressive in his actions, but the setup for this program made IP tracing a pointless endeavor. I don't fully understand the complexities, but I know that person and I trust their work. So, I plunged into the depths of the deep web, seeking government-declassified documents and the like, and I stumbled across a forum of coroners. And unlike other coroners, they didn't deal with murder, suicide, or mundane mysteries. Their victims were all cryptid or supernaturally related. I mentioned my interest in their jobs, and I explained I sought answers. The users were not happy with my presence, but when I explained my encounter with a Wendigo, they actually recognized me. Apparently, certain reports from psychiatrists can make it to them if certain words are used, and the doctor did not suspect subterfuge. They offered a deal. I archived some of their cases, and I would learn about what happened to my unit. They didn't seem to have a problem if I was to release most of the details to the public, but they warned that most people would not accept the surreality of the world. But if I could garner some interest, they would allow it as long as personal details were omitted. And I would come to understand why later on. But I agreed. Case 1. First of all, I would like to thank you all for your interest in my new vocation. As you can imagine, the case that I chose to disclose first was the one that I was personally involved in. I was not quite aware of the implications that would be brought to light in doing this, however. Having spoken with some of the morticians in the forum page, they asked that any name is to be withheld, locations were to be generalized, and make sure no government agency was aware of my action. I agreed, and they showed me the case of my unit. Case file: Wendigo/Milvet, number 0261. After consolidating the reports with the lone survivor of the event and the autopsies on the recovered military personnel bodies, the following is a fairly accurate recollection of the events. At 0016, the MIL unit was sent to investigate the reports of an intruder. This was a training exercise to judge the capabilities of lone survivor as a team leader. Approximately at 0039, the MIL unit had an auditory reconnaissance of Wendigo number 0183. Estimated identity of cryptid is John Sampson, a hunter who went missing around 1703. Recovered body Private Jacobs reported a branch snapping. The MIL unit halted and tried to locate the source of the sound. Around 0040, Wendigo number 0183 charged the unit and snatched Private Second Class Hill, snapping his neck. Private Tommy went to investigate but was grabbed by the claws of Wendigo number 0183 and his throat was slashed. Specialist Jameson was dragged under another bush. Claw marks indicate his death was slower as the lungs were punctured multiple times. Private Second Class Erickson was able to shoot Wendigo number 0183 when it charged the group again. As multiple previous cases have established, standard ammunition fails to leave a true impact on the body of a Wendigo. Further evidence that older Wendigo are virtually immune to small arms fire. Erickson was killed immediately when his skull was impacted from the top, severely misaligning two vertebrae, severing the spinal cord and crushing the throat vertically. A lone survivor was knocked aside. Estimate time duration for encounter with Wendigo number 0183 is 3 minutes. Acting Corporal Jenkins' body was never recovered. Of special note in this case is that this is one of the first times that the cryptid in question spoke in response to the presence of the survivor. The word empty is confusing, as Wendigo are traditionally voracious in their pursuit of human flesh. Autopsy summary: Erickson, Jacobs, Tommy, and Jameson. Erickson: fractured skull from overhead strike from cryptid, catastrophic damage to the neck and throat area due to the force of impact. Severing of the spinal cord implies death was instantaneous. Jacobs: multiple stab wounds from the claw of the cryptid. Secondary infection was not able to infect the body. Body was still cremated as per protocol, as was Tommy. Tommy: throat slashed by claws of the cryptid. Note, this is the same Tommy who witnessed the encounter of the police officer who encountered Skinwalker, Michigan Sub-Territory Number 4. Said police officer also reported on the mush corpse in the vehicle. The two deceased military personnel, names Hill and Jenkins, were not recovered, likely taken as food by Wendigo number 0183. Judging by the enforced counseling sessions for the survivor, it seems unlikely he willingly caused the incident. Reading over the case file, I tried to figure out the implications of the things that caught my attention. Had these people really figured out who the Wendigo was? Or was it just guesswork? Had there been enough encounters for the filing system to be displayed in the way you saw it? I was aware Tommy was given the choice of enlistment or prison. It makes me wonder if the incident they refer to was the same case that caused him to make that decision. Why are skinwalkers designated by territories? Could it be that given their ability to shapeshift, make it impossible to identify who they originally were? The mush corpse is not a reference I am familiar with, and while I could imagine why it was called that way, the term mush seems overkill. But given the wealth of resources that I have access to, I chose to see what these morticians and their network have concluded regarding Wendigo. Wendigo is a humanoid cryptid, and while we have been unable to locate the first known Wendigo, we have concluded that the original story of these beings is more fact than fiction. Wendigo are humans who, after prolonged starvation, consumed human flesh, and in the process are cursed by something which causes their transformation. Their transformation is an approximate growth of limbs by 22%, and the fingernails elongate, sharpen, and harden to assist in catching more humans to consume. Why the Wendigo feel the need to consume human flesh is not readily apparent. It is speculated that it is the only meat that satiates their never-ending hunger. And after consuming human flesh of a sufficient quality, older Wendigo requiring more, they return to a place of significance for them and hibernate for years. Fire seems to be a bane to these creatures, as it makes holding off the younger ones a more viable tactic. However, Wendigo who are over 2 centuries old seem to ignore the heat of the flames and ignore it as a stalling tactic. Weaponizing it against Wendigo is the far superior option. However, most people when facing cryptids seem to leave their rational minds behind as they see something truly abhorrent to them and seldom take the time to mull through the problem. Given that Wendigo gain in strength and speed, is understood why humans rarely have the time to plan. Cases involving firearms were conflicting until it was deducted that younger Wendigo were vulnerable to small arms fire, until their body matured to resist caliber smaller than a .22. Very few encounters have involved active military personnel, so judging that firepower is difficult unless more encounters were had. Knives are an effective if foolish idea for Wendigos who are less than a century old, and their behavior indicates that they shun civilization. Reasons why are speculative. The information was illuminating. Hopefully, this will be of benefit to you all. If there are any other cryptids that you wish to know about, or maybe unusual deaths, please let me know and I will try to locate the appropriate case file. There were a few more votes for our Dogman case, so I have found one that I hope strikes something within you. This one is fairly recent from what I can tell. There is some footage from a fairly early commercially available nanny cam, but I have been asked not to upload that due to the hidden surveillance encryption which allows the alphabet agencies access at their discretion. Case file: Dogman/Civilian, number 0819. Initial victim is an autistic male of 9 years old, severe anxiety around strangers, communicative abilities restricted to barely legible writing in a large diary. Secondary victim is the child's mother, and father's whereabouts unknown, not important to this case. 3 weeks prior to the incident, she purchased an emotional support animal to see if it would alleviate her child's anxiety issues. Location is a lifestyle block in the state of Montana, and the land is family-owned and wasn't seldom used. Financial information was further obtained in the process of our investigations into the event, and it has been deemed inconsequential, but it has been recorded for the sake of necessity. The initial victim was content to be left alone, but according to the counseling adhered to by the mother, she felt that this would hamper the social development of her child. Records from these counseling sessions indicated that the counselor would explain that due to the levels of anxiety that the child exhibits in social situations, there would be little chance for future development. The counselor did gently coax the mother into acquiring an emotional support animal that the child might feel bonded to. Given the location where they lived, a dog was suggested. And according to the audio from the nanny cam footage, the bonding process was a success, with the initial victim showing some self-confidence, even looking his mother directly in the eyes. The dog was well trained and didn't react to extreme emotions exhibited in the lounge area. And 3 weeks later, the mother could be seen running into the lounge. The time was quite late judging by the lack of light outside the windows. Blood could be seen on her clothing, and judging by her wails and screams, the child was dead, mauled by some animal. Clutched tightly in her hand is the cordless phone for the house, and while the phone line was disconnected, the microphone still worked and the hard drive in the base was still recording. The mother was aware that the phone lines weren't working, and she could hear scraping movements upstairs. This was confirmed via the recordings acquired. She was then seen rushing to a window, and she looked out in shock, and after significant alterations of the video recording, a lupine humanoid cryptid, known commonly as a dogman, was seen skulking at the edge of the camera range. Presumably seeing this, the mother backed away and turned as a canine head peered around the corner, nearly hitting its head on the doorframe, indicated that it was not of a standard height of any known dog breeds. It stalked into the room on its hind legs. The coloration looks like the emotional support animal previously mentioned, and parts of the fur seemed matted down, likely with blood. A third dogman also entered, but was on all fours, and judging by the gait, it seemed unsure of its pace. This could be attributed to the polished wooden floor. The secondary victim was frozen in fear as she saw the two cryptids. The attack was swift and coordinated. The one on all fours went low, while the one standing on went high. Her death was quick, and the third one joined the other two for the meal, after the standing one unlocked the door. They then walked to the door, opened it, then bounded off into the night. Police investigation came as a part of an initial missing persons report after the mother hadn't called her family. Police found their bodies and they opened a homicide investigation, and the case remains open. The bodies were diverted from the regular coroners to the ones affiliated with this forum. Autopsy. Initial victim. multiple bite marks to the arms and stomach area, scratch marks from a large paw evidence on the limbs, microtumors located within the brain which could indicate the autism and social anxiety problems. Secondary victim: bite wound on the ankle, severing an Achilles tendon, single bite mark to the throat, evidence that the stomach area was scourged. Missing organs include ovaries, kidneys, uterus, stomach, pancreas, liver, and 95% of the intestines. Secondary investigation: our primary one. Scouring the nanny cam footage shows in the weeks leading up to the attack, movement could be seen during the day. The day of the emotional support animal, no anomalous movement detected. 5 days after the bonding, a Dogman cryptid could be seen creeping up to the house. The emotional support animal stood up and walked over to the wall opposite of where the Dogman crawled to. The emotional support animal stood there for several minutes until the Dogman cryptid crept away. The initial victim just watched as his emotional support animal stood at the wall, while the initial victim is normally next to the emotional support animal at all times, even during sleep. The movement at the edge of the nanny cam view resumed until the night of the attack. Movement in the peripheral showed 2 dogmen approach the house. One skulked at the edge of the light on all fours, and while the other ran to the side. Screams could be heard from a location suspected to be the child's bedroom, and soon, the mother could be seen entering the lounge in the state previously described. Several journals were taken as evidence in the initial investigation, and upon discovery of the contents within, they were switched with duplicates, with explicit mentions of dogs being removed. The mother made note of several minor incidents where her child would stand at the window and look into the forest. When she would ask if he would like to go for a walk in there, he refused violently. And as soon as she mentioned that they wouldn't be walking there, the child immediately stopped and hugged his mother. Judging by the descriptions in the following incidents, it appears to the same location the emotional support animal would stand when the dogman approached. The mother advised that while she did some basic yard work, that she always felt trepidation when she looked into the forest area. Like there was something watching her. She tried to muster the courage to go look for herself, but didn't want to risk leaving her child alone. The journals of the boy seemed nonsensical, but after multiple encounters with children on this kind of spectrum, certain clues were common among all of them. These journals were able to get upgraded in their standards of language. The initial victim was aware of the cryptid presence. When he would see the dogman standing outside his window, he would scream for his mother and cause the cryptid to flee. And this happened for about 2 years. One day, while he was walking around the backyard within view of his mother, he felt the dogman approach. Its claws snagged his shorts and started to drag him away, but his mother fortunately spotted her child disappear from view, and when she approached, the dogman ran, leaving the child behind. What people most find chilling is that the day the emotional support animal stood near the cryptid was referenced in the book of the initial victim. Doggy was wrong. Looked like doggy, but not doggy. Ma not know doggy wrong. Doggy looks at me like the bad thing at times. It is surmised that the emotional support animal was turned into a dogman through unknown means, as 3 dogmen were seen running from the house. The emotional support animal dogman was able to use his paw to turn the lock by hooking the key in between his toes, and the handle was easier to manage. Details on the cryptid, Dogman. Dogman is of a common cryptid type. the anthropomorphic animal, and while it doesn't have full human features, it is able to walk on hind legs for extended periods of time and display near-human intelligence, significantly weaker than the more supernatural Wendigo or Skinwalker. Regularly available firearms are enough to kill a dogman, and reports indicate that upon death, dogmen revert to their more base canine form. If there are any more cryptids that you would like to read about, please feel free to let me know down in the comments below. And here are the top comments for my last video. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.